There's a lot of things that you hear that just don't make sense and just seem so stupid. You can't believe someone would say it, but they do. It happens every fucking day. One group of pseudo intellectuals that continues to just boggle my mind with their pseudo-scientific bullshit is known as the alternative right. Also known as the Kekistanis, also known as the Pepes, also known as fascists, also known as Trump's death squads, basically, also known as whatever the fuck you want to know them as. They're the most cancerous people out there next to like their opponents for the most part. Which by opponents I don't mean like people that reasonably are opposed, but people who are opposed because they're just as crazy ideology goes against theirs. The alt-right bases a lot of the shit they say off genetics. They think that somehow race is a genetic thing that makes you act certain ways, which makes no damn sense. When they talk about white genocide, for example, they're talking about white people becoming a minority in European countries, which hasn't really happened yet in Western Europe. You know, white people are still the majority in Britain and Sweden and Norway and Germany and Switzerland. You know, they're still a majority, but they're afraid of the increasingly shrinking white population, and they're worried that it's genocide. Well, first off, they obviously don't know what a genocide is. A genocide is organized killing of people based on their religion or ethnicity. No one is lining white people up and shooting them into fucking pits in Europe. Okay? No one's sending them to death camps. That's not a genocide. The fact that you and your wife don't fuck enough to have 7 kids like that Muslim guy and his wife over there. That's just called demographic trends, bitch. But the alt-right doesn't understand that. Now, me personally, I couldn't give a fuck if Europe stopped being majority white. Who the hell cares? Being white just means having light skin and light hair. And it's a totally artificial category. What we call white has changed over the centuries. White isn't even synonymous with the Caucasian race. Only certain Caucasians have been considered white during the history of our racial science bullshit. You know, now do I support preserving European culture? Definitely. I don't think Europe's culture should be erased from the face of the earth. But people don't need to be white to preserve European culture. Culture and race are not the same. That's a mistake the alt-right makes. If you want examples of this, I got a few. A black British person is more similar to a white British person in their culture than they are to an African. The reason for this is because culture is a series of customs, beliefs, and traditions that a person follows. You aren't born genetically with certain customs, beliefs, and traditions. Those are impressed upon you by the environment you live in. Meaning that based on your race doesn't matter. If you're raised in a country, you will act like other people in that country, even if you don't look like them. So let's imagine that a Japanese family adopts a little white girl for a child and raises her in Japan. The girl will probably grow up to be a Japanese person. She may not look necessarily like them, but she's going to speak fluent Japanese and do everything they do. And conversely, a black Brit is a British person. They just are black. Another example of this is black culture in America. Black American culture really isn't black culture at all. It's actually basically Southern white culture that they adopted after their culture was completely just obliterated during slavery and shit. Slavery killed the original African cultures of these people by, mixing them together with other people of different cultures, forcing Christianity on them, all that bullshit. So their culture is basically Southern white culture. So in reality, black Americans are really not that unassimilated. They actually have much of our culture just from a different region of America. The culture of a black American is nowhere near similar to an African person. Okay? And we know this because we have tried before to put the two together. During the 1800s, America established a nation known as Liberia. The nation still exists, barely, but it still exists. And what it was a colony that we sent free slaves to. Mind you, this was in the early 1800s. The distance between us bringing slaves here and then us sending them back was less than the distance now between African Americans and when we brought the slaves here. But already cultural differences had developed because the African Americans and the native Africans of Liberia did not see eye to eye. They did not get along. Their cultures were very different. And to this day, they have fought wars with each other for power because neither group likes the other. So contrary to what the alt-right would claim, they didn't bring them back and immediately they were like, oh yeah, we're back with our African brethren. No, their culture was more similar with American culture than it was with African culture. Culture is not racial. You could be any race and practice a culture. Hispanic culture. Hispanic is not a race. An Argentinian is a white person for the most part. And a Dominican is black. But they're both Hispanic. They have the same culture because guess what? Culture is not racially determined. It's how you're raised. God damn it. I wish we had some more smart people in this country, but I forget we're the country that believes that evolution didn't happen, global warming doesn't exist, and our failing infrastructure is good enough for use. So I'm not surprised we have a bunch of pseudo-intellectual fascists come about in this country. The thing is, American culture and Western culture do not rely off one being white. It relies off where you are raised. If we assimilate people, we can bring them in. Trust me. People say, well, what if the people we're bringing in now are not assimilatable because they're just too different from other cultures? That's what they said to turn the century too. And you know what happened? They got assimilated in. I got a couple points about why that's bullshit. Number one, I've been to Italy, I've been to the Palestinian West Bank, I've been to Jordan, I've been to Spain. I've been all over the Mediterranean. And I can tell you that Mediterranean cultures on both sides of the Mediterranean are more similar to each other than, northern Mediterranean culture is to northern Europe. So we could assimilate the Italians and the Greeks. We can assimilate, Arab people and shit. We also, another point, we assimilated the Chinese into this country. Nowadays, Asian Americans are the most assimilated racial minority group in America and one of the most successful. Asian Americans come from countries that don't even speak anywhere near Indo-European languages. Their culture is totally non-Western. It's an Eastern culture. No similarity to Western culture, but they assimilated in just fine. If they could assimilate from halfway across the globe from Europe, I think Arab people can too. And Hispanics, our culture is basically European. It's from Spain. So why would we not be able to assimilate? That doesn't make sense. Overall, the alt-right just says a lot of stupid shit. I don't know why anyone takes them seriously anymore, but apparently, the Keck army will continue to march on. Nothing we do can stop their stupid bullshit. The only thing we can do is at least keep rational thought alive. What's this? I don't know, fuck that. We gotta keep rational thought alive because otherwise they win. And by they, I mean the alt-right or Black Lives Matter or Islamists or communists or whatever other crazy group is terrorizing this country right now. I'm Lila Dog 568. Ciao, y'all.